The stage lights burned hotter than the August sun, and Ezra Cole, 22, felt every bead of sweat roll down his neck as he clutched the microphone. The crowd at Willow Creek's annual Summerfest, 100 strong, a sea of expectant faces, was waiting for him to choke. He could still hear the jeers from last year, when he'd belted out "Let It Go" with a flourish, his voice soaring in a way that earned him cruel whispers. Princess, fairy, not man enough for this town. But tonight, Ezra wasn't just singing for himself. He was singing for Jamie Alvarez, 24, the man who'd taught him that courage wasn't about silencing the haters. It was about drowning them out with your truth. Jamie stood in the front row, his dark curls catching the stage lights. His brown eyes locked on Ezra with a quiet strength that said, "You've got this." Willow Creek, a sleepy town in upstate New York, wasn't ready for Ezra Cole. Not really. A wiry kid with hazel eyes and a penchant for Disney ballads, he'd grown up on the fringes. Too soft for the football team, too bold for the church choir. His mother, Lila, a single parent who ran the local diner, had always told him his voice was a gift. "Sing like the world's listening, easy," she'd say, her hands floury from kneading dough. But the world, or at least Willow Creek, hadn't been kind. High school had been a gauntlet of snickers and shoves, and even now, at 22, Ezra felt the weight of every sideways glance. Tonight, though, was different. Summerfest was the town's biggest event, a sprawling festival of music, food, and small-town pride. Ezra had signed up for the open mic, a last-minute decision spurred by Jamie's encouragement. Jamie, a barista at the town's only coffee shop, had moved to Willow Creek 2 years ago from Brooklyn, bringing with him a contagious energy and a knack for seeing people. Really seeing them. He'd spotted Ezra singing under his breath while mopping the diner's floors one night, and instead of laughing, he joined in, harmonizing to a whole new world, with a grin that made Ezra's heart stutter. "You're not just good, Ezra," Jamie had said, leaning across the counter, his voice low and earnest. "You're magic. Don't let this town dim that." Now, as Ezra stood on the rickety stage, his heart pounded louder than the drumbeat intro. He'd chosen "Part of Your World" from The Little Mermaid, not because it was safe, but because it was true. Every word of Ariel's longing mirrored his own. To be seen, to be free, to belong somewhere bigger than this small-minded town. The music swelled, and Ezra's voice rose, clear and unapologetic, cutting through the humid air. The crowd went quiet, not the hostile silence he'd feared, but something softer, almost reverent. He caught Jamie's smile, wide and proud, and for a moment, it was just the two of them. Ezra's voice weaving a spell, Jamie's gaze holding him steady. But not everyone was enchanted. In the back, a group of guys from Ezra's high school days, led by Nate Carver, a burly 23-year-old who'd once stuffed Ezra into a locker, muttered and laughed. Nate's voice carried over the crowd. "Still singing like a princess, Cole?" The words stung, but Ezra kept singing, his voice climbing higher, defiance in every note. Then, something shifted. A murmur rippled through the crowd, heads turning toward the side of the stage. Ezra faltered for a split second, his eyes flicking to the source of the commotion. A man in a crisp blazer, graying at the temples, was striding toward the stage with purpose. Governor Daniel Hargrove, the festival's guest of honor, wasn't supposed to perform tonight. Yet there he was, climbing the steps, his face unreadable but his presence commanding. Ezra's voice caught in his throat, the final note hanging unfinished. The governor reached for the second microphone, and the crowd held its breath. Was he here to shut this down? To side with Nate and his crew? Ezra braced himself, the old familiar dread creeping in. But then Hargrove spoke, his voice booming through the speakers. "Mind if I join you, son?" Ezra blinked, stunned. The governor wasn't waiting for an answer. He nodded to the band, and the opening chords of "Part of Your World" started again. Hargrove's baritone joined Ezra's tenor, steady and warm, not overpowering but amplifying, like a hand extended in solidarity. The crowd erupted, some in cheers, some in shocked whispers. Nate's jeers were drowned out, his face paling as the governor sang. His eyes locked on Ezra with something like pride. For the first time, Ezra felt the weight of Willow Creek's judgment lift. He wasn't alone up there, and as he glanced at Jamie, whose hands were cupped around his mouth, cheering louder than anyone, Ezra knew this moment was bigger than a song. It was a declaration. The festival didn't stop buzzing after Ezra and the governor stepped off the stage. People swarmed Ezra, some offering hesitant compliments, others gushing like they'd just discovered him. Lila pushed through the crowd, her eyes shining as she pulled him into a hug. "That's my boy," she whispered, her voice thick. Jamie was next, his arms wrapping around Ezra in a way that felt like home, his lips brushing Ezra's ear as he murmured, "You were fearless." But not everyone was celebrating. Nate and his friends lingered at the edge of the festival, their glares sharp enough to cut. Ezra caught their eyes as he and Jamie walked hand in hand toward the food stalls, the fairy lights casting a soft glow over their intertwined fingers. Nate's lip curled, and he muttered something to his buddies, who laughed darkly. Ezra's stomach twisted, but Jamie squeezed his hand. "Ignore them," he said. "They're just noise." Still, Ezra couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Willow Creek had a long memory, and Nate wasn't the type to let a public humiliation slide. Jamie seemed to sense it too, his usual easy grin tightening as he scanned the crowd. "Let's get some food," he said, steering Ezra toward a taco truck. "We've earned it." As they sat on a picnic bench, sharing a plate of tacos under the stars, Ezra felt the weight of the night settle into something warm and fragile. Jamie's knee bumped his under the table, a small, deliberate touch that made Ezra's heart race. "You know," Jamie said, his voice soft, "when I first moved here, I thought I'd never fit in. Too loud too. Me. But then I saw you, singing to yourself in that diner, and I thought, there's someone who gets it." Ezra ducked his head, his cheeks burning. "I thought you were just being nice." "Nice?" Jamie laughed, nudging him. "Easy. I was half in love with you before you even noticed me." The confession hung between them, sweet and heavy, like the summer air. Ezra wanted to say it back, to tell Jamie how his laugh had been the first thing to make Willow Creek feel less suffocating. But the words caught in his throat. Instead, he leaned closer, their shoulders brushing, and for a moment, the world was just the two of them. But the world had other plans. A shadow fell over their table, and Ezra looked up to see Nate standing there, his arms crossed, his smirk cold. "Cute," Nate said, his voice dripping with venom. "You think one song changes anything, princess? This town doesn't want your kind." Jamie was on his feet in an instant, his jaw tight. "Back off, Nate." Nate stepped closer, his bulk looming. "Or what, Alvarez? You gonna sing him out of this one?" The tension crackled, drawing eyes from nearby tables. Ezra's heart pounded, but he stood too, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at him. "We're not doing this, Nate. Not tonight." Nate's laugh was sharp, but before he could say more, a voice cut through the crowd. "Is there a problem here?" Governor Hargrove stood a few feet away, his presence like a storm rolling in. Nate froze, his bravado faltering. "No problem," Nate muttered, backing off with a glare. Just talking. Hargrove watched him go, then turned to Ezra and Jamie. You boys okay? Ezra nodded, his throat tight. Yes, sir. Thank you. Hargrove's smile was small but genuine. Keep singing, Ezra. The world needs more voices like yours. He tipped his head and walked away, leaving Ezra and Jamie in a stunned silence. As the festival wound down, Ezra couldn't shake the feeling that tonight had changed something fundamental. Not just for him, but for Willow Creek. Jamie's hand found his again, and as they walked toward the parking lot, the stars bright overhead, Ezra felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this town could learn to listen. The next morning, Willow Creek woke to a different kind of buzz. Social media was alight with clips of Ezra and Governor Hargrove's duet, shared and reshared across platforms. The hashtag Willow Creek Sings trended locally, with comments ranging from heartfelt praise to snide remarks about Ezra's princess voice. Ezra scrolled through his phone at the diner, his stomach churning as he read the mixed reactions. Some called him an inspiration. Others echoed Nate's taunts, their words sharper behind the anonymity of a screen. Lila slid a plate of pancakes in front of him, her apron dusted with flour. Don't read that garbage, Easy. You made history last night. Ezra managed a small smile. History, huh? Feels more like a target on my back. She squeezed his shoulder. Let him talk. You've got people in your corner. One of those people was Jamie, who burst into the diner just after the breakfast rush, his eyes bright with excitement. Easy, you're not gonna believe this. The governor's office just called. They want you to perform at the state fair next month. With Hargrove. Ezra nearly dropped his fork. What? Why me? Jamie grinned, sliding into the booth across from him. Because you're a star, that's why. And Hargrove's not dumb. He knows a good story when he sees one. You two singing together? That's political gold. Ezra's mind raced. The state fair was huge, drawing thousands from across New York. It was a chance to be seen, really seen, but the thought of standing on a bigger stage under brighter lights made his chest tighten. What if I screw it up? What if they hate me? Jamie reached across the table, his hand covering Ezra's. They won't. And if they do, screw him. You've got me, your mom, and now a freaking governor backing you. Ezra laughed despite himself, but the unease lingered. Willow Creek wasn't the only place with naties. The world was full of them, and the state fair would amplify everything. Love, hate, and all the messy in between. Over the next few weeks, Ezra and Jamie threw themselves into preparing for the performance. They rehearsed in the diner after hours, Ezra's voice blending with Jamie's guitar as they worked through a medley of Disney songs. Jamie had a knack for arrangement, weaving Ezra's vocals into something lush and cinematic. We're not just singing, Jamie said one night, strumming a chord. We're telling a story. Your story. Ezra blushed, focusing on the sheet music. It's our story, Jamie. Jamie's fingers stilled on the strings, his eyes softening. Yeah, he said quietly. Ours. Their rehearsals became more than just practice. They were stolen moments, a bubble where Ezra could forget the whispers and glares. One night, as they finished, "Can you feel the love tonight?" Jamie set his guitar aside and pulled Ezra close, their foreheads touching. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. "Every day, I'm proud of you." Ezra's heart swelled, but before he could respond, the diner's door jangled. Nate stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Didn't know this place was a gay bar now," he said, his voice low but cutting. Jamie stiffened, but Ezra spoke first, his voice steady. "It's a diner, Nate. You want food, sit down. You want trouble, leave." Nate's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. For a moment, Ezra thought he might swing, but then Nate turned and walked out, the door slamming behind him. Jamie let out a breath. That guy's got issues. He's got a lot more than that, Ezra muttered. But the encounter left him shaken. Nate's hostility wasn't new, but it felt sharper now, like a blade being honed. The state fair loomed closer, and with it, the pressure. Ezra's nerves frayed as the day approached, but Jamie was his anchor, always there with a joke or a touch to ground him. Lila, too, was a constant, slipping extra bacon onto his plate and reminding him to breathe. Even Governor Hargrove checked in, sending a handwritten note that read, "Keep shining, Ezra. The world's watching." The night before the fair, Ezra couldn't sleep. He slipped out to the diner's back porch, staring at the stars. Jamie found him there, wrapping a blanket around them both. "What's on your mind, Easy?" Ezra leaned into him, the warmth of Jamie's body chasing away the chill. "What if this is too big? What if I'm not enough?" Jamie tilted Ezra's chin up, his eyes fierce. "You are more than enough. You're everything this world needs, brave, real you. And I'll be right there, every note of the way." Ezra kissed him then, soft and slow, the stars above them witnesses to a promise neither had spoken aloud yet. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The state fair was a kaleidoscope of color and noise, cotton candy clouds, screaming rides, and the hum of thousands of voices. Ezra stood backstage, his palms sweaty as he peeked through the curtain. The crowd was massive, stretching across the fairgrounds, their faces a blur under the stadium lights. Governor Hargrove stood beside him, adjusting his tie with a calm that Ezra envied. "Nervous?" Hargrove asked, his voice kind. "Terrified," Ezra admitted. Hargrove chuckled. "Good. Means you care. Just sing like you did at Summerfest, and you'll have them eating out of your hand." Ezra nodded, but his stomach churned. Jamie was out there in the crowd, his guitar slung over his shoulder, ready to join for the second half of the set. Knowing Jamie was watching steadied him, but only just. The weight of the moment, of being a queer kid from a small town sharing a stage with the governor, was crushing. The MC's voice boomed, introducing them, and the crowd roared. Ezra's heart leapt into his throat as he stepped onto the stage, the lights blinding. Hargrove followed, waving with the ease of a seasoned politician. The music started, a sweeping orchestral arrangement of a whole new world. Ezra's voice trembled at first, but Hargrove's steady baritone anchored him, their voices weaving together in a harmony that felt like magic. The crowd was with them, cheering, swaying, some even singing along. Ezra's fear melted into exhilaration, his voice soaring higher, freer. When Jamie joined them for the medley, strumming his guitar with a grin, Ezra felt invincible. They transitioned into Reflection from Milan, Ezra pouring his heart into every word of longing and self-discovery. Jamie's guitar added a raw, emotional edge, and Hargrove's presence lent it gravitas. But not everyone was cheering. Ezra caught glimpses of faces in the crowd, some hard, some sneering. A small group near the front held signs, their words too small to read but their intent clear. Nate was among them, his arms crossed, his glare like a storm cloud. Ezra's voice faltered for a moment, but Jamie's eyes found his, steady and sure, and Ezra pushed through. The performance ended with "You'll Be in My Heart" from Tarzan, a song Ezra had chosen for its quiet strength. As the final note faded, the crowd erupted, the applause drowning out the handful of boos. Hargrove clapped Ezra on the shoulder, whispering, "You did good, son." Jamie rushed the stage, pulling Ezra into a hug that lifted him off his feet. Backstage, the high of the performance crashed hard. Ezra's phone buzzed with notifications. Praise, hate, and everything in between. A local news outlet had already posted a clip, the headline screaming, "Governor sings with gay small-town star." The comments were a battlefield, some calling Ezra a hero, others a disgrace. He handed the phone to Jamie, his hands shaking. "They don't get to define you," Jamie said, his voice fierce. "This does." He gestured to the stage, to the crowd still cheering. But the hate wasn't just online. As they left the fairgrounds, a group of protesters, Nate among them, blocked their path, shouting slurs and waving signs. "You're not welcome here," one yelled. Ezra froze, his heart racing, but Jamie stepped in front of him, his fists clenched. "Enough!" A voice cut through the chaos. Hargrove, flanked by security. The protesters scattered, but Nate lingered, his eyes burning with defiance. Hargrove turned to Ezra and Jamie. "You boys need a ride?" They nodded, climbing into the governor's SUV, the silence heavy. Hargrove broke it, his voice soft. "I've got a daughter, you know. She's queer. Came out last year. Seeing you too. It gives me hope for her." Ezra's throat tightened. "Thank you, sir, for everything." Hargrove smiled. "Don't thank me. Just keep being you." The state fair performance made Ezra and Jamie local celebrities and targets. The diner became a pilgrimage site for supporters, but also a magnet for hate. Graffiti appeared on the back wall one morning. "Faggots go home." Lila scrubbed it off before Ezra could see, but he heard about it from a customer. His stomach sank, the old fear creeping back. Jamie, ever the optimist, tried to keep things light. "They're just mad we're famous," he teased, nudging Ezra as they cleaned the diner. But his eyes were wary, scanning the windows for trouble. Trouble came soon enough. A week after the fair, Ezra was closing up alone when Nate and two of his friends cornered him in the alley behind the diner. "You think you're hot shit now, huh?" Nate spat, stepping closer. "You and your boyfriend, parading around like you own this town." Ezra's heart pounded, but he held his ground. "I'm just living my life, Nate. Why does that bother you so much?" Nate's fist shot out, grazing Ezra's cheek before he could dodge. Pain flared, but before Nate could land another blow, a shout echoed down the alley. Jamie, who'd been dropping off supplies, sprinted toward them, his face a mask of fury. "Get away from him!" Nate's friends grabbed him, pulling him back as Jamie reached Ezra, his hands gentle as he checked for injuries. "You okay, Easy?" Ezra nodded, his cheek throbbing. "Yeah, let's just go." They reported the incident to the police, but Nate's family had deep roots in Willow Creek, and the officer's response was lukewarm. "Boys will be boys," he said, shrugging. Ezra's anger simmered, but Jamie's was afire. "This isn't over," he vowed as they walked home, his arm around Ezra's shoulders. The next day, Lila organized a community meeting at the diner. Dozens showed up, supporters, skeptics, and a few curious onlookers. Governor Hargrove made a surprise appearance, his presence lending weight to the conversation. "What happened to Ezra is unacceptable," he said, his voice firm. "Willow Creek is better than this. We're a community, not a battleground." The meeting sparked something. Neighbors who'd never spoken to Ezra before offered support. A local artist painted a mural on the diner's wall, a vibrant scene of Ezra and Jamie singing, surrounded by Disney characters. The hashtag Willow Creek Sings grew, becoming a rallying cry for acceptance. But Nate wasn't done. Late one night, Ezra and Jamie found their car tires slashed. A note tucked under the wiper. Leave or else. Ezra's resolve wavered, but Jamie's didn't. We're not running, he said, crumpling the note. This is our home. They doubled down, organizing a benefit concert for a local LGBTQ+ youth group. Ezra was nervous but determined, his voice stronger with every rehearsal. Jamie's guitar was his backbone, their music a defiant act of love. The concert drew a crowd bigger than Summerfest, with Hargrove in attendance, clapping along as Ezra sang, "Let It Go," with a fierceness that silenced the doubters. After the concert, a teenage girl approached Ezra, her eyes shy. "I'm like you," she whispered. "Your music, it makes me feel like I can be me." Ezra's heart swelled. "You can," he said. "Always." The benefit concert marked a turning point, but not an ending. Nate's harassment didn't stop, but it grew quieter, less bold. The community support, bolstered by Hargrove's advocacy, made Willow Creek feel less like a cage and more like a place where Ezra and Jamie could breathe. One evening, as autumn painted the town in reds and golds, Ezra and Jamie sat on the diner's back porch, wrapped in a blanket. The stars were bright, the air crisp. Ezra's cheek had healed, but the memory of Nate's fist lingered. "Do you think it'll ever stop?" he asked, his voice soft. "The hate." Jamie took his hand, his thumb tracing circles on Ezra's skin. "Maybe not completely, but we're stronger than it. Together." Ezra leaned into him, the weight of the past months settling into something hopeful. "I love you," he said, the words spilling out before he could stop them. Jamie's smile was radiant. "I love you too, Easy. Always have." They kissed under the stars, the world quiet for once. The next day, they found a letter slipped under the diner's door. Not a threat, but an apology. It was from Nate, scrawled in uneven handwriting. "I was wrong. I'm sorry. It wasn't much, but it was a start." Ezra kept singing, his voice a beacon for others. The diner became a safe haven, its walls covered in messages of love and support. Hargrove's daughter, Mia, visited one day, thanking Ezra for giving her the courage to live openly. Willow Creek wasn't perfect, but it was changing one note at a time. Years later, Ezra and Jamie stood on the Summerfest stage again, now as a couple, their hands intertwined as they sang "A Whole New World." The crowd cheered, no jeers to be heard. Lila watched from the front, her eyes shining. Hargrove was there too, clapping with pride. Ezra's voice soared, carrying the weight of every struggle, every triumph. He wasn't just singing for himself anymore. He was singing for Jamie, for Mia, for every kid who felt too different to belong. And as the final note rang out, he knew. This was their world, and they'd made it brighter.